Okay, hi folks, welcome back. In this video, this is the second series in the Yavanajataka videos Fernando and I are doing. So in this video, we're going to be talking about chapters 10 to 18. We'll be stopping.
19.
Yeah,
19.
well, sorry, we'll be stopping once we get to 19. So we'll be going through 10 to 18, stopping at 19. And basically what we have in these chapters is real simple. We've got these solar-lunar yogas in the first couple chapters that a lot of people will already know and love. And then we have each planet through each sign of the zodiac, according to Yavanajataka. And we have no mention of nakshatras, we have no mention of the nodes, and something else that you said.
No mention of Vargas, although they're going to
Yes.
be mentioned on later chapters. So we from the initial get-go, we start seeing these descriptions, and nakshatras are absent, and other other aspects of traditional Jyotish are absent here.
Right. Cool. So yeah, without further ado, I'll do a screen share here, and people will be able to follow along with the text.
Yes. By the way, for those who haven't seen the first video, you should see it just to be aware of where we are in this analysis of this astrological classic.
Yeah, and I also want to point out too that I'll keep reminding both of us in this video the planetary friends and enemies are quite different in Yavanajataka than anywhere else. So it'll be interesting to contemplate that as we look at the planets in the different signs a bit. Okay, so yeah, chapter 10, we get the yogas for the moon, Sunafa, Anafra, and Duradara, which is first a planet in the second place from the moon, Sunafa, a planet in the 12th place from the moon, Anafra, and then planets in either of both of those houses, Duradara. And then we get also, when none of this is occurring here, the inauspicious and greatly feared Kemaduruma yoga. But I just want to point out that, with the way Yavanajataka defines it is very specific, right? If these yogas with respect to the moon don't occur, and there are no planets in the angles of the chart, angles from the ascendant, then this configuration, lacking the aspect of all the planets, is called Kemaduruma, and it is the lowest influence. So that means also that the moon has to have no aspects from any of the planets. Theoretically, no whole sign aspects, right? So it has to be what the Hellenistics would call in aversion to all the planets, and there has to be no planet in an angle, I'm assuming, aside from maybe the moon, because I don't think this is totally possible, or maybe it is, without one planet like the moon being in an angle. It might be, but the point is like it's extremely rare. There's usually cancellations happening, and so I've never seen a pure Kemaduruma. Have you?
Me neither, and thank God, because this is very unfortunate, to be honest with you. And just to touch upon the subject, Kemadurumas are very rare.
Yeah.
Kemadurumas are, I would say, even rarer than pure Raya yogas, maybe.
Yes. Oh yeah.
These are very rare, and thank God they are, because the moon is so important to us. And if they're where to be one, I guess it would be some kind of homeless person or some kind of destituted man or woman who are just forgotten by society, who will probably never get an astrological consultation. Just be aware of that. I've seen an example of a Kemaduruma in action in Tiger Woods' sidereal chart, and it got activated more or less when the sexual scandal went on with him a few years ago. But yeah, thank God it's unusual because it's really bad, because the moon is like a baby, and the moon likes to be in relation to other planets.
Yes.
It receives the energy of other planets, and other planets define it. It defines the mind, and it's very important. And if you don't have that in a chart, and if the moon is a dark moon or is a dying moon, then it's going to be even worse.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to say, which we haven't mentioned, if you can go back to a little up, right there, so people can see right there. We've discussed Anafa, Sunafa, Duradara, and Kemaduruma. And as you can see here, Pingree has written the Greek equivalent of the words, because as we've mentioned in the last video, one of the strong arguments that Pingree uses to justify the idea that Yavanajataka was prime in influencing early Jyotish is that these terms in Sanskrit only exist in the Jyotish context, right? And as they exist in the Jyotish context, these words at the same time are very familiar to Greek words. So this is more or less the argument that scholars use to justify the idea that Yavanajataka, a very early written material on astrology, is more or less fundamental in the Jyotish tradition of India, right? It's not the only one. There are a lot of things going on in Jyotish, but it's very important to connect this fact to the bigger fact that Greek or Hellenistic astrology cross-pollinated with Jyotish, and there's probably a strong evidence for that.
Yeah, and we have to keep in mind too that like the way we think about countries in the modern day sense was not how they were thought of in the ancient world. So
they didn't exist.
Yeah. So I don't know what was called, like they may have called the land or the country that it is now India, but the borders were probably completely different, and there are many different tribes and languages and even cultural aspects. Many of the deities even come from the south. Persian culture had a huge influence on northern India, and so did the Mughals and so on. So there really wasn't this like sharp demarcation of countries. So this is not, people shouldn't feel like taken aback by this or offended by this, that somehow like their tradition is not pure. There's no such thing as a pure culture, race, or tradition. There's just not, it doesn't exist anywhere. So I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
However, what exists is trunks of culture, and taking into consideration what you've said, another idea that we can add to that is that it's the same Indo-European culture. I mean, Indo-European root. There was no such thing as a country. There was no such thing as the modern concepts that we know of Asia or Europe. And at the same time, India comes from the word from the Hindus river. It's the people who are more far at the other side of the Hindu river, which was the river that divided India from Persia in the ancient world.
There you go. Cool. So
and people should not get offended by these videos, and probably Indians or people who are more Vedic oriented in terms of faith will probably see this as an attempt, but as we've discussed before, this is a historical fact. It's been studied, and at the same time, it's just a note. It's just one little thing that adds to the huge body of Vedic
and
culture, which is native to India in many ways. I mean, maybe native to the whole world because it's perennial, but this is just perennial. A little thing. And we got to remember, Jyotish is the sixth Vedanga. It's the last thing you learn, and it's probably the last thing because it's probably the newest thing that came in through the Hellenistic influence. I'm sorry, are you going to say?
Yeah. Well, and also too, even with the Vedas, there was a scholar, I think pundit and Indian freedom fighter, who wrote a book on how the Vedas must have been written down in the Arctic.
Oh yes, I remember that book. So I don't remember. Yeah.
We have to. The point is whether or not that's true. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on it. But the point is that we have to get away from this notion that this is mine, and like it's only mine, and it's nobody else's, and that kind of a thing. That just that divides us more than anything. So I wanted to point out too that Kemadruma, I just remembered this. I think it comes from the Greek word, which is something like kenodromia, which means running in the void. So the moon, the void of course moon is something in more, that we see more in what the Western kind of astrology or circles or whatever. But
which has various definitions, by the way.
Yeah, so the
not only one
original,
way to see it. Yeah.
that's exactly the original definition of void of course moon is really bizarre. It's like something like if the moon is not going to make any sort of aspect within 30 degrees. So it's very similar to what's said here. Whereas later void of course moon was, it was modified so that basically if the moon is not going to make any more degree-based aspects in the sign that it's in before it changes sign. And then there's even a definition where if it's not going to make any aspects outside of about 13 degrees, which is the average daily motion, even if it is going to aspect something else in the sign, if there's like a 14 degree gap, so to speak, some people say 12, I say like 14, then basically it's void of course. And that is something we do see happen more often. It's very useful in horary astrology, question astrology, prajna, but it also can be useful in birth charts, and it is a condition that it's not nearly as debilitating as what's written here, but it does give us some insight into challenges for the person, is what I find. So
and another thing that in Jyotish, the first yogas that they teach you to analyze are these solely lunar yogas, because the sun and the moon are so important to the development of the person. And
right.
Concerning the moon, I mean, the moon, it doesn't matter if it's a malefic or a benefic, the moon always likes to be with company,
Yeah, it does.
Because the moon is a baby, the moon is the mind, and the mind depends upon other people. It's just like a person who's antisocial, who does not go out. I mean, the tendency to go crazy or to develop different mental pathologies are more possible if you are not in contact with other people. And this is more of a metaphor in terms of analyzing why this is so. The moon likes to be with other planets, and she feeds from that energy and receives that and defines the moon. And as you will see, when a moon is void of course or has some sort of kamadruma affliction to it, not a pure one, when Saturn comes over that moon, or you have probably what we call in Jyotish the Sarasati, it's going to be very difficult situation.
Sure.
Person. So it makes sense, and these are precepts that anyone can use in their practice, no matter what school they are, I believe, because I don't think there's such a thing as somebody saying that the moon alone is a great position. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I don't know. I don't think so. No. The moon is really important in any tried and true system of astrology, it seems like. And I've kind of highlighted here like the basic description of these yogas. And before we maybe look at a few verses or whatever, I also want to say that what's interesting here is that the doctrines seem to have changed for some reason from the Hellenistic doctrine regarding looking at the moon and the sun, but more the moon, because here we have it based on the houses, the signs around the moon, right? But in Hellenistic text, it tends to be more about what planet the moon last aspected by a degree-based aspect and what planet it's going to apply to aspect next by a degree-based planet. And it's virtually the same idea. It's like one is in the past, showing like what's influencing you strongly from the past, and one is what's drawing you toward the future. So for whatever reason, it's different here. We get something different. We get a sign-based, house-based way of looking at it rather than a degree-based. And I don't know why that is. That may be because Yavanajataka, for whatever reason, developed more as a sign-based system in India and departed from a more degree-based system. Although we will find certain degree-based things in Yavanajataka later on when we talk about divisionals. But so I have no idea why this happened, and I don't really know how to use both techniques in tandem. One theory I have is that if you approach it this way through the sign-based, house-based, then it's maybe more broad strokes of things versus the actual aspects to the moon might be more influencing the mind itself. Because here we have in the descriptions a bit more, it's not as characterological. It seems to be a bit more about like position in society and stuff. So do you have any thoughts on that?
I believe it has to do with the technical development of astrology. You know, if you see the development of the history of astrology, the more we get into the modern era, the more technical it gets.
Yeah.
So, you know, the idea of falling into this idea of degree base, I mean, they're both at the same time, always.
Right.
You know, degrees are a way to sharpen the analysis. And
Yeah.
and another thing, the sun and the moon are very important in a chart. More the moon than the sun, in my opinion, because you know I'm more of a Indian-based study. But you could, in theory, give a good reading just from the sun and moon position, because it's so important to us in many ways. And the more you get into these luminaries, the more you realize how important they are, and you start, you know, thinking a lot about them. You know, that's where you get the whole Panchanga system in India. This is where you get the importance of the moon in terms of astrological magic. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. So I think it's just the overdevelopment of the technique, right? But just to remind people, these are the first conjunctions you have to see in a chart, in my opinion, in terms of analyzing yogas, as I've said before. And this is why I think it's right here in the beginning chapters of the book.
Okay, cool. Yeah, great commentary there. So yeah, let's just move on.
Great commentary from your part too.
Thank you. So we have Sunafa describe the second house from the moon described in, you know, thusly: wise and strong, good conduct, fame, desiring righteousness, and so on. Then anaphora, which is in the 12th from the moon, or that the moon is leaving, right? The moon is going away from that 12th house. Produces a glorious, eloquent man attached to business, an enjoyer, actions unimpaired and distinguished. So what's interesting is, like, it could be wrong, but it appears that the Sunafa yoga is maybe the one that is a little more powerful in some ways. Like, or, you know, what could we deduce from this real quick? It's like Sunafa, you're going towards these new things, right? And maybe you're going toward them more voraciously, whereas the anaphora is stuff you already kind of have, maybe from past karmas, past lives, maybe from your ancestors, your family. I don't know, really. That's kind of how I was thinking about it. What about you?
The majority of the luni-solar yogas are gotten mainly from Brihad-Jataka and from Phaladipika. I have the quotes, so we can compare them if you want to. So,
okay.
So, you know, let's just read about it. I mean, we have here the let me look for it. So you have can we go to the first part of the chapter so we can discuss? There you go. It says, you know, if a planet is in the second place from the moon, those who understand yogas call it Sunafa, right? If it's leaving the moon, they call it anaphara. And anaphara, it's reduced to anafa in other classics.
Right.
So we kind of get the idea that, you know, anafa is the 12th and sunafa is the second, correct?
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So we get here the definition. So the moon entering anaphara, which would be the anafa. I'm sorry, I get confused with anaphara and anafa. Sunafa, anafa. Anafa would be the 12th house,
12th,
correct?
Yeah, 12th from the moon.
So the moon entering the 12th produces a glorious and eloquent man who is attached to business, an enjoyer whose actions are unimpaired and distinguished, and who possesses a noble quality, which would be the 4, right?
Right here,
so,
yeah.
If I'm going to share my screen, so we can see the other one. Oh, you cannot start to share while the other participant.
Oh, okay. I'll stop the share. Okay.
So I go to mine here, and we get here. This is a writing from one of my teachers, Mark Boney. So here you see the following. The following verses from Brihad-Jataka describe the primary lunar yogas formed when planets other than the sun appear in the 12th second in both houses from the moon. And that's very important. Sunafa and Anafa and Duradara, they have to do with planets other than the nodes or the other luminary in question, as we're going to see also in the...
Right. So no sun, no nodes, and that's the same in Yavanajataka.
But in Yavanajataka they don't mention the nodes.
Right, they don't mention the nodes. Yavanajataka doesn't seem to suggest that these yogas are canceled by the sun or the nodes, for example, which is sort of another perspective on it.
So Brihadjataka says right here, if the second house from the moon is occupied by any planet except the sun, a yoga called Sunafa is created. If the 12th house, oh, we should have read the other one, whatever. If the 12th house from her is occupied by planets other than the sun, it is called Anafa. If both the second and 12th houses from the moon are occupied by planets other than the sun, the yoga is called Duradara. In case none of those two houses are occupied by any planet, there arises a yoga called Kemadruma. If, however, there is any planet other than the sun and the moon in an angle from Lagna, the Kemadruma yoga is not caused. There are also some consider that Kemadruma is caused if there are no planets located in the angles from the moon. Similarly, they are of the opinion that if there are no planets in the second, 12th, or of the sign in Navansha,
yeah.
So it's they're getting very specific. Occupied by the moon, Kemadruma is caused, but this opinion is not widely recognized.
Sure.
So
okay.
Got that definition. So more or less, he's giving possible things. The lunar yogas, they're all good except the one who is void of course, which would be the Kemadruma, right? And then he gives the definition for Brihadjataka, which is the other source for this Soli lunar yoga. And he says, a person born in Sunafa, which would be the second house.
Second from the moon, yeah.
Acquires wealth through his own efforts, which makes sense since it's the second, right?
Yeah.
He is, I'm sorry. There we go. He is a king or equal to a king in status, endowed with intelligence, wealth, and fame. One born in Anafa, which would be the 12th, rules over others, is devoid of disease, is of good character, with good name, enjoys comforts of life, dresses well, and is free from worries. A person with Duradara yoga is born with a silver spoon in his mouth. That's very nice. Is very rich and possesses conveyances. Is liberal and has many servants. A man born with Kemadruma, on the other hand, is dirty, miserable, mean, poor, servile, and wicked, even if born in a royal family, which was what I was telling you about. A person with Kemadruma, we're not going to see him.
Right.
He's not going to come into a consultation. He's going to be in a home shelter or somewhere where astrology is not seen. I mean, so I'm going to unshare it. So
so the cool thing about that is that this absolutely confirms what I was just saying, is that the Sunafa yoga is sort of the stronger one in a sense, because the person runs towards it and acquires it more voraciously and by his own efforts, whereas the Anafara is sort of like what you're already born with. You're kind of just comfortable. You have a good name, your family. Yeah.
And we have to remember that the moon is the fastest moving planet. So
yeah,
it's going to get it anyway. It's not going to happen with other slow moving planets, which would not happen in other ways. Most times. Yeah.
And then of course, Duradara is, the best of both worlds. You have sort of both there, and although to be honest, not necessarily if the person has Duradara because of Mars and Saturn. I've actually seen that be a very problematic thing in a couple people's lives.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna get their maleficence from those planets, but I believe it's much better than not to have any planet at all.
It could be. Yeah, I'm not totally sure yet. The jury's still out on that for me. I have to maybe see some more.
I mean, they're gonna have those malefic qualities to them, but
it's more to their life that they have it. Like, and to be fair,
it's gonna be difficult and hard. Yeah.
To be fair, these are twins that have a different ascendant, but
different ascendant twins. Okay.
Yeah, cool. But they have Saturn retrograde and they have Mars with Rahu. So to be fair, it's not like a pure situation where it's like a good Saturn, good Mars. They're kind of both in a little bit of a hairy situation. But I just wanted to throw that in there, that you always have to analyze everything, of course.
Every chart is different.
Yeah.
Hence, every chart needs a particular astrological approach.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't want to talk about like all of these or anything, but
Me neither.
we'll find.
Do you have one of these so we can like relate?
I do. I mean, but
because I let me tell you, I almost have a quemadruma in my chart.
Okay, wow.
But it is saved by a conjunction with Jupiter.
Well, see, I have
planets in Kendras, so you get a cancellation there.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Well, I have. It's questionable because see, Mercury, which would make one of these, is combust, and then Venus and Mars, which would make the other one, are with Rahu.
No, simplify it, man. Just simplify it.
I don't know if that cancels it or not. It depends on who you talk to. But if we look at if we take my Mercury, it would be Sunafa, eloquent, wise poet, knows music, singing, sacred traditions, and sciences.
That's you right there,
friendly
baby.
to all creatures, fame and wealth increase. So I am a musician. I have a degree in music. I've studied a lot of sacred traditions. Not maybe as many sciences.
Well, sacred traditions are sciences, so yeah, whatever.
Sure. I think I'm generally well behaved.
You're well behaved, yes. You're well behaved.
I am friendly to all creatures.
Especially your Facebook friends, yes.
Oh yeah, right. Well, I am friendly to all creatures. I do trap spiders and centipedes and things like that and put them outside, and even scorpions. I don't like to kill these more widely feared sort of wretched creatures. I catch them, put them outside. So so this works very generally for me, even though my Mercury is combust, it seems like. So
you take care of Scorpios. That's nice.
Scorpion medicine is powerful medicine, so you don't want to disrespect the scorpion and any of it.
That's the most expensive chemical right now, organic substance right now. Scorpion venom. It's a specific scorpion venom that is used in certain drugs, and to extract it is very costly. But yeah. Wow,
interesting. Cool. And then we could just compare that one real quick to let's see if we can find Mercury in Anaphora in the 12th, right? If Mercury is in Anaphora, he's an orator, clever at writing and transcribing, also devoted to music and acts of sexual intercourse, poet again, and who has knowledge and is authoritative. Well, I mean,
while you're having the sexual intercourse.
Yeah, exactly. While you're having it, right? It's not that much different, is it? It's not really fundamentally that much. It's slightly different, right? I think maybe the other one applies to me a little better, but this one still has music. It still has poetry, and it still has knowledge and stuff. So I don't know. Anyway, did you want to say anything about any of these, or?
I don't have any of those, so we can just,
Oh, here's the Saturn-Mars one, huh?
Ooh.
Moon is between Saturn and Mars. He is irate, slanderous, has many enemies, a prattler, tormented by misery, who has acquisitions and much wealth, but whose hoard is insecure. So even in good condition, it's still the malefic. So
yeah, but even though that's better than having quemadruma,
Yeah,
because quemadruma, you would just have melancholy, depression, poorness. Your mind would be. It's better to be fighting or to be suffering against life than life.
To be apathetic and just
pushing you to the ground because of the vicissitudes of life. That's. But yeah, it's not easy. True. Don't get me wrong. Those are malefics.
And then this final verse is kind of weird here because it seems to be suggesting that if the malefic planets are actually well placed, but in the 6th or 8th houses, and then or in their signs of dejections and enemies, they injure whatever is related to that particular area. So it's there's something off about this verse, because obviously it's not going to be the same result if these planets are in their own signs and well placed, So I kind of just think that there's something corrupted about that personally, or it's a bad translation. I don't know. Okay. And then I don't think we have too much else to look at here. I didn't really mark anything in my notes, so
we move on to the sun.
Yep. So similar yogas for the sun, right? Of different names.
But with the sun is a little bit different, right? Because there are some discrepancies in terms of these yogas. You know, some people say that Vesi yoga, which is when you have a planet in the second, is sometimes bad, right? And Vosi is good, but sometimes they say that either one is good depending on the planets that are forming it, like we just with the Mars-Saturn example. So if you want, what we can do is we can read the full descriptions of Vesi, Vosi, and Uvashari, and then we can read the descriptions from Brihad-Jataka and Faladipika.
Sure, yeah, and I also just noticed this now. I don't think that Yavanajataka gives an equivalent to Duradara for the sun. I don't think it gives that.
No. Duradara does not happen with the sun. Only Uvashari, yeah.
What's Uvashari?
Uvashari is when you have planets on the 12th and the 2nd.
Yeah, that's what I mean, though. Yavanajataka doesn't seem to give an equivalent to that.
He doesn't give... Yeah, he gives Uvashari.
Does he? Let's see.
I think he does. Well,
no, he doesn't.
Let's read.
He doesn't. This is the end of the chapters. Yeah, he doesn't give it, and he also, there's no equivalent to Kemadruma for the sun, and there's no equivalent later on either. But I think I understand why. So, like, yeah, let's just read this. So he was born under Vesi, which is where a planet in the second from the sun. So the sun will be moving toward that planet. Is a man of weak voice whose actions are despised, weak in both eyes and downward looking. He's worn out with sorrows, and the upper part of his body is bowed down. Versus a planet. Oh,
it's negative.
Very negative, yeah. Very weakening. Versus a planet in the 12th, which is called Vasi. He was born under Vasi, has a clearly distinguished voice, and possesses energy, strength, memory, good conduct, firm body, powerful, glance upwards, and front of his body's broad. So very positive, very life-affirming. And we'll read the other definitions, like you said. But my theory here is that this is purely based upon both combustion and the fact that the planets are receding into the sun's rays, basically. So what's happening in Vesi is that since the sun is moving toward the planets, they are at their weakest sort of phase in their cycle relative to the sun, which is something that is looked at a lot in Hellenistic astrology. So they're sinking into the rays of the sun, meaning they're gradually disappearing, gradually weakening. And that is why I believe that Yavanajataka treats Vesi as very negative, versus in the 12th, the planets are coming out of the rays of the sun, being reborn, being empowered, reappearing in the night or morning sky. I guess it'd be the morning sky, yeah. So reappearing in the morning sky after having been combust, hidden, right, lost. So that's definitely very Hellenistic. And
how would it express with Mercury, right? When you think about these examples, you think about Mercury, and then you realize how Mercury always becomes a problematic neutral, and it has to do with these ideas that of the movement it does. How difficult it is sometimes to see it with the bare eye. I mean, when we discuss combustion, I always think about Mercury. I'm sorry, but yeah.
Sure. Mercury is kind of the exception in many respects. Even Bepin Bahari says Mercury is not affected by combustion. I think every planet is affected by combustion, but in different ways. So every planet's always going to be hidden by combustion. There's just no way around that. You can't see it. It's hidden. Okay. It doesn't matter if it's astronomically in front of the sun or behind it relative to us on Earth. So it's hidden on some level, but that doesn't necessarily mean everything about it is destroyed. And there's a lot of there's a mitigating conditions in Hellenistic astrology, and some even in Jyotish as well.
Especially with dignity.
Dignity has a lot to do with it.
Which is the idea of
yoga,
the car covering, like with the shade from the sun. I don't know what's the term. I forgot it. It's like when it's
a good way to look at it. Yeah.
It's like a sort of cart that protects you from the sun. But and I also want to say that the Hellenistic descriptions of combustion, in my opinion, are much better than the Indian descriptions for combustion, because in I don't know if it has something to do with the language, but in Jyotish, combustion is always described as something that destroys the planet. But you see charts where this is not the case.
Sure.
While in Hellenistic, an emphasis is put on the idea of the occult, the hidden, right?
Yeah.
I mean, occult, it means hidden in Latin, but in Spanish, occult is hidden. What I mean is hidden, the idea of things that are hidden from view from other people,
Yeah.
which do happen, which do get fruit, but not necessarily call the attention of others. So yeah.
And yeah, and that's really interesting. Combustion, I think, is still one of the most like confusing ancient
And
doctrines.
combustion is something that you have to see with the eye, which
You
is
have to see with the eye, yeah.
It's not something that you're going to just like planetary war. It's something that you have to see with your eyes. It's not something you're
Yeah.
going to see in the computer.
Right.
You got to see it. I mean, you could see it with a computer model, but not necessarily from an astronomical computer model, not necessarily from an astrological computer program. But yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's a really good, important point to make. This is more the very, very like omenological pieces of astrology that sort of got just like subsumed into the more technical doctrines. And so finally,
which is how people used to do astrology.
Yeah, exactly.
Until the last, let's say, I mean, ephemerides always existed, but the idea of computers, and not only computers but charts and these types of rulers, these are something that just came in the few last centuries, to be fair with it, right? Computers just came in 30 years ago.
Computers just came in.
But the idea of arithmetical tools to help the calculations are just brand new things in the art of stargazing. People would do this during the night.
Right. Yeah, like the Babylonians especially were very visual astrologers. They didn't really do much with charts as we understand them.
And taking that into consideration, I touch upon the idea that I just mentioned about Mercury. Mercury, I don't know, have you seen Mercury with your eyes? I mean, Mercury...
I don't know that I have, to be honest.
Mercury is
maybe once.
Very difficult to see. I mean, because it's so close to the sun, but it's right there. But yeah, let's continue. Do we want to read the other definitions?
Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to say that, again, this technique of a planet like rising out of the sun's rays or sinking into it in Hellenistic astrology is called making an appearance, or phasis, which is the Greek word. And so basically what the technique is if in 7 days prior to the birth or 7 days after, a planet is either rising out of the rays of the sun or sinking into it such that it becomes visible or invisible after being invisible or being visible, then that is a very important condition. And I think that this is Yavanajataka's take on that. So yeah, let's share your screen now and have a look at the other text.
Which, by the way, we have to remind people that the definitions from Brihat-Jataka and from Phaladipika are after Yavanajataka. Okay.
Yeah.
By at least 500 years. Okay. So we get here. By the way, this is a writing from one of my teachers, Mark Boney. So I'm using it. So if people want to learn from him, he has a YouTube channel and a website. Go look him up. Very good traditional Jyotish. He is the apprentice of K.N. Rao. Probably one of the most famous and most important living astrologers to this date, as we are making this video in December 2018. Cool. Here we have the basic definition, right? And we've just discussed that. Desi Yoga, planets in the second house from sun. Vosi Yoga, planets from 12th house from the sun. And the Ubashari, which would be planets from the second and 12th, which is not discussed in Yavanajataka. So we can extrapolate that this was something that was developed after Yavanajataka. Okay?
Yep.
So we get here the Parashara definition. Let's read the Parashara definition. So here we see the native born with Vesi, which would be in the second house, will be even-sided, truthful, long-bodied, lazy, there we go, happy, and will have little wealth. Okay, so we're getting a negative description to us.
Slightly more negative, yeah.
In Vosi, which would be the 12th, he will be skillful, charitable, and will be endowed with fame, learning, and strength. And in Ubashari, which is something we haven't seen in Yavanajataka, will be a king or equal to a king in happiness. So we're seeing here that by Parashara's time, which is later than Yavanajataka, Ubashari is considered the best. Okay. The above said effects are to be considered when all these yogas are caused by benefic planets, and the contrary when they are formed by malefics. The effect will be contrary to the above ones.
So that's different.
We're seeing here that contrary to the moon, usually with the moon doesn't matter, right? But with the sun, it does matter, the maleficence or the beneficence of the planets involved in these yogas.
Yeah, and we'll have to check that against Yavanajataka afterwards to see what he says.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And
here we have the Phaladipika definition, which says, one who is born in Shubha Vesi, yeah, you see there, he's already giving if it's a
Shubha,
benefic or a malefic. When one is born with Shubha Vesi yoga, which would mean benefic planets, specifically benefic, not functional benefics, Venus, Jupiter, crescent moon, full moon, or Mercury with some kind of other benefics like Jupiter or Venus or crescent or full moon. In Vesi, which would be the second one, which is the least strong one.
Second house, yeah.
Yeah, is very handsome, happy, meritorious, brave, and virtuous king. Makes sense. He who is born with a Shubha Vasi yoga, the same benefics, but in the 12th from the sun, becomes famous, popular, exceedingly prosperous, liberal, and favorite of the state. The native born with Shubha Uvashari, which would be the best one, benefics in front and in the back. In front and in the back. Yoga possesses a beautiful form, is affable and adverse delight the people by his eloquent speech, and is famous and prosperous. Okay? Now we see the other side of the coin, right? One who is born with Ashubha Vesi Yoga, negatives, in the second one, specifically Saturn, Mars. No notes here. Yoga will unjustly vilifies others. He loses his beauty, associates with the low and is wicked. One born in Ashubha Vasi Yoga is deceitful, abuses others, and befriends the wicked. He's not righteous in his conduct, but quotes Shastras and scriptures.
That's great. I've met people like that.
I have that, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I have, no, I'm sorry. I have both. So I have this one, a man with a Shubha Uvashari Yoga. That's me. Is mentally afflicted, so I'm mentally afflicted because of being publicly defamed, and I've been publicly defamed.
Have you?
He is without learning, wealth, and destiny. Wow, that's a hard one.
Damn.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Well, you're certainly not without learning.
Well, some might say that I am.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. The thing about this is, yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? It's definitely interesting. It's a different perspective than what we're seeing in Yavanajataka. Slightly.
This is how it developed, right? This is like a sort of what do you say when you analyze a dead man?
His legacy, or
no. In terms in doctor sense,
autopsy,
a forensic
analysis.
Okay. An amateur pseudo and archaeological analysis, critical analysis of the development of these techniques early on the transmission to India.
Yeah,
and how it developed into like Shubha Vesi, Shubha Vasi,
something else. Yeah,
Shubha Uvashari, Ashubha Uvashari, and Ashubha Vesi and Ashubha Vasi. So we see how important these things are in Jyotish per se.
Yeah, well, and here if we just kind of quickly look at this stuff, right? We get Jupiter in Vesi produces a man with distinguished friends who knows many hordes. So Jupiter's really the only of these 6 other planets that seems to do well in Vesi, according to Yavanajataka. But when we get to Vasi Yoga, all the planets do well in the 12th from the sun, even Mars and Saturn. Mars, one who's famed in battle and whose arm is unequaled. Saturn, a slanderous person whose actions are merciless. Now, that sounds negative, but it's empowering, though. Despite the fact that it may not be morally upright, a slanderous person whose actions are merciless, right? So it is empowering versus, Saturn here in Vesi, Saturn, a rogue who is hostile to his elders, which is more...
I have that one.
Okay. Well, are you hostile to your elders?
No, but I have Mercury also, so...
Okay.
It would be an obedient and gentle man of little strength, a slow thinker who is overcome by shame and is fond of food. I love food.
Ben,
So,
aren't you like an MMA fighter or something like
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. Well, I haven't trained in a year, but yeah.
Okay, so
And then I have Saturn, so I'm also a rogue who is hostile to his elders, right?
yeah. But I think like with anything, we can't take this too literally out of context. And of course, we also have to look at the dignity the planets are in. If they're getting really good aspects too, like if if you have Saturn there and you like read this, but then you find that, oh, like Venus or Jupiter is casting a good aspect to Saturn or something like that, or Saturn's in good condition. And, it changes things. It changes
And
things.
we have to remember that this differs from the Faladipika description, right?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Quite a bit, because they automatically say that negatives would form an Ashuva, a negative formation. And here they're saying that, malefics are not necessarily that bad. And people have to realize that natural malefics are malefics, but they're not useless. They're very useful in life.
Yeah, they're important to the scheme.
To survive. Absolutely. And to fight in the struggle of life.
Yeah. Yeah. And, at the end of the day, the malefics are just, that's what we call them. They don't call themselves that,
They are aggressive. They are more cruel.
You could say that. I mean, I think that's how we sort of experience them within our current state of human evolution and stuff. But as I'm endeavoring to do in my video series on the planets, I'm endeavoring to explain how each of these planets just serves a function that has no negative or positive. It just is what it is, So Saturn is about focus and going within, and Mars is about action and breaking out of inertia. So
how I see it, it's obviously good or bad is a moral judgment, right?
Yeah.
And it depends on the culture, as you correctly stated. But I see that maleficents are cruel and beneficents are gentle, because cruel planets, what they do is that they keep the good for themselves and they give the bad to others. Okay? And gentle planets give the good to others and keep the bad for themselves. So, this can be seen from various perspectives, but it's more of an egoistic perception of Saturn and Mars, right?
I think that there's definitely truth in what you say, but I can't totally agree on like the fundamental essence of what these planetary energies are. Like, I don't think in essence,
nobody can. But
Saturn and Mars are somehow more egotistical and selfish. I don't think that's the part of their essence of what they do in the universe, if that makes sense.
I take it from the idea that they're both tamasic, right? And
that's okay. I mean, I don't consider them both tamasic, but I also don't consider tamas to be anything actually fundamentally negative or evil.
No, that's the thing. I'm not saying it's negative.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's positive. What I'm saying is that they keep the good and give the bad, and the others keep keep the bad and keep the good. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself.
Yeah, no, that makes a certain amount of sense. And I guess all that I'm pointing out is like that is useful definitely in astrological analysis, but I don't know if that is more of like to me like a tertiary signification, not necessarily a fundamental one.
Prime. Okay,
that makes sense. Yeah, but I might revise my opinion, and you might.
No, and it's a way to approach the idea, to approach the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and
but we can agree that they all serve a very important function in life.
Yeah, you can't have one without the others, and
Definitely.
so on. So I think just to conclude for this chapter, my own personal sense is to like follow more in the footsteps of Yavanajataka with this particular set of techniques. I just think that the idea of the rising and sinking into the rays of the sun just sort of makes more sense to me. And so that's.
Do you have one of these, Lars, to read it? Do you have one of these?
I don't in my chart. No.
Okay, cool.
Let's see. Do I know anybody that does?
No. We just talk about ourselves. Let's next page.
We just talk about ourselves. Okay.
Yeah. So far, so good. Man, we've talked a lot. I didn't expect us to talk this much about these yogas, but we did.
Oh yeah, it's important stuff. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it is. It is very important. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Alrighty, so
here we have the sun in positions.
Yeah, and I just want to mention one more thing. Is like again with any of these positions and any of the yogas that we just talked about and so on, like we always have to. Hart Defoe said something very useful in one of his books, and that was that effects in Jyotish are cumulative. So if you have a well-placed planet, but it's in Vesi yoga, but it's like really powerful and so on, right? It may well function more like the more modern definition, because we want to look at what's cumulative, not single factors and just say, oh, that's weak. But, I am thinking of a specific chart where the person had Venus fallen and in Vesi yoga, and yeah, their wife did die, so but you have an accumulation of effects going on there and so on.
People have to realize that confluence, and I guess you got that quote from Art Defoe from the Science of Light, right?
Yeah, the Light on Life. Yeah,
Light on Life. I'm sorry, Light on Life. Science of Light is another book.
Light
on Life book. People have to realize that confluence is intrinsic and very important in the process of doing forecasts and predictions. And this is the biggest problem with YouTube astrology channels these days, that, for example, the sun in Aries, right? This is the result. But there are other things going on, conjunctions, aspects, degrees, avashtas, vargas, a lot of things going on, yogas, So we can't fall in the error of massifying an approach towards a position without realizing that, one, as you said, we need confluence, and two, that every chart is different, hence we're all different, hence every chart requires a particular astrological approach. So this is why, if you want to know your positions in your chart, you probably have to read all the descriptions that apply to it, right? Instead of just one, right? And not only that, you have to see the other planets and how they come together, which eventually you see how complicated astrology is, right? And how vague and superficial most critiques toward astrology is, because they don't realize how convoluted it can get sometimes.
Right. And you have to understand the stellar mechanics of things, the astronomy. Otherwise, you will get lost. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, a planet could be in Vesi yoga, but if it's actually rising out of the rays of the sun, which would be Mercury or Venus, they could be in Vesi yoga, but rising out of the sun's rays and moving away from the sun. That's different. I'm sorry, but astronomically, it's not the same thing. So you have to be aware of this. Otherwise, you could just really blunder. And I think it's important that we just keep mentioning this as we do this and other videos, because these old texts can be pretty unforgiving. We're going to see that in these analyses, Scorpio is just
that's
God, so negative, and Aquarius too is so negative.
I was going to say that a little bit on that the positions for Saturn and Mars are horrible. And
oh my God! Yeah, even Mars in Scorpio is horrible.
Yeah.
His own sign.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to say is that, making an echo of what you've just said, these books, in my opinion, purposely do
go to
not
extremes.
Include not only that, but they purposely do not include the things you are saying and I am saying, because they don't want the secret knowledge to fall upon people who do not have the capabilities of doing it.
Who are unthinking,
Yeah, it's the idea of protecting the sacred knowledge, right? And not only that, they exaggerate it so that, people who are not from a studied background, and I don't mean like in a university sense, it's the idea of being an initiate, an adept, so they can't, use these techniques for negative purposes and that sort of thing. So it's all part of the system of protection of the sacred knowledge and transmitted from generation to generation. was done before. Now it's completely different with the globalization and the global village and the information society we live in today. So I mean,
that's a good point.
And we're gonna see from this chapter on, from chapter 12 through 18, or no, through 17, 18, no, through 17, that for some reason, the Mars positions and the Saturn positions are very stereotypical. It's like, it sometimes reminds me to the stereotypes that Americans have toward minorities. It's the same thing. I mean, look out, the black man is going to rob your car, or I need a gardener, so I'm gonna get a Mexican. Chinese eat dogs. White girls like those brown boots with the leggings.
Well, white girls do like those brown boots with the leggings.
Yeah. I don't know what's the name of the. Yeah. And we could also say the other things, but that's more controversial, right? Because those are minorities. Although whites are minorities in the world population, but we're not gonna get into that. But the idea is that they get very stereotypical. So you have to take these things with how do you say it? With
a grain of salt.
A grain of salt.
My friend says, take everything and everyone with a grain of salt and be on a low salt diet.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. So, I love that one. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, so I wanted to look at a couple verses here, just for fun, in chapter 12 of the Sun. It's interesting because Yavanajataka says that basically the only friend of the Sun is Jupiter. That's it. Every other planet is his enemy, according to
his scheme of friendships. Yes.
For whatever reason. I don't really know why. But, we want to contemplate that. And the point I'm trying to make here by mentioning this is that Yavanajataka, or the author, seems to just sort of throw this out the window a bit with these interpretations. Like, for example...
Which makes you think.
It does, yeah, because if Mercury is supposed to be an enemy of the Sun, then why is it such a positive thing when Sun's in Gemini? It's like really positive, great things, honestly.
Which relates to the normal Jyotish parameters for friendship, because
that's true, yeah.
In the normal schemes, Mercury is the only friend of the Sun, in addition to the Moon.
I thought, I don't know. Oh yeah, you're right. I don't know. I forget those sometimes. Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. It's similar to that, or like, even.
I'm sorry. I got confused. The Sun is friend. I'm sorry. It's vice versa. It's Mercury.
Yeah, because Mercury is a neutral.
I'm sorry. The Sun is I'm sorry. It's the language.
Okay.
The Moon, Jupiter, and Mars are the friends of the Sun. Mercury is a neutral.
It's a neutral, right? So, and then too, even in the Sun in Taurus is pretty positive. There's a couple of negative things, but nothing big. But what I found interesting is that the most negative ones were the Sun in Cancer, which I was surprised at, and the Sun in Scorpio, which I wasn't surprised at because of the way these old texts are. But man, the Sun in Cancer, a man who hates his own allies, is subject to others, lacks determination in action, and talks stupidly, can't stand in one place, and delights in drinking.
Do you know why? I know why. Because of it's.
I'm not sure, actually. No.
It's in a feminine sign.
It's in a feminine sign. Okay.
It's the idea of the weakness of the feminine gender from how they used to think back then. It's the idea that the king is in the most purely female sign of the whole zodiac, so he's gonna have female conduct like
that. Yeah, and I was just thinking on top of that too, Cancer is the 12th sign from Leo, the Sun's own sign, and that Cancer in a sense is like sort of the apex of worldliness because it's the moon sign, and the moon is the planet closest to the Earth, so it is kind of the planet that rules over change and the gunas and the states of mind, the 27, 28 states of mind, and so on. The tattvas, right? Like the 25 tattvas and so on.
Although some people say they're more, depends who you ask.
Oh yeah, sure. There could be an endless number of tattvas depending on how you look at it. But yeah, so the moon is multiplicity, the sun is unity. So that could be part of it too. I think, yeah, it's a good point though that this text is fairly biased toward the male gender. I don't find anything in here about women's charts. It's always like a man who is
Definitely.
so and so and has
Because
many.
women were property back then.
Yeah, so
Which is part of life. I mean, that's how things were back then. And yeah, women
yeah,
work for marrying and having kids.
it's true, but it's kind of an unfortunate thing about this text. It's one of the things that, in my opinion, mars it a bit, because even authors like Valens and like Firmicus Maternus and some other Hellenistic authors will talk about women's nativities and how to look at women's nativities. You know, they'll say in a woman's chart, you look at these planets to get her husband and stuff like that. So it just sort of depends on what part of the world, I guess, the author was writing in, and, you know, that kind of a thing. But Sun in Cancer is pretty negative, and Sun in Scorpio is also like really negative. It's just,
I have the sun in Scorpio, so
I know, my God, this is like so.
I have the worst combinations according to Yavanajataka.
I know, and to be honest, like I don't see a lot of what Yavanajataka talks about with all this. Like sometimes the sign placements, I can think of people, I'm like, holy crap, that is accurate to the word, and I'll talk about one of those later. But like the Scorpio one, like no, I've known plenty of Scorpio suns and whatnot, and I haven't found this description to be really that accurate. No, definitely not. Definitely not. So I just don't know what to say about this. Like, is it a metaphor? What the hell is it?
What I wanted to say before I got confused, and I'm sorry, I've screwed up here and I screwed up in the last video. So, I'm sorry. But the thing I wanted to say is that we can presuppose, maybe we can build the hypothesis that maybe this was introduced later on, or there were two different ideas in terms of friendship schemes. I mean, there are a lot of things we can think about, but the truth is that these arrangements do not correspond mainly to the friendship scheme that Fujitvaya gave in the previous chapter.
Right.
These are more related to traditional Jyotish positions, obviously with the stereotypical pejorative descriptions for Saturn and Mars.
Yeah. So maybe, that's a very good point. I didn't even think of that. Maybe this is sort of like a later addition to the text, or a later perspective, because it doesn't seem to really follow the friendship scheme and the logic. And then even later on in the text too, when you start to see where he actually goes through a planet in every house, and in not in every sign, but in every planet sign. So he'll say the sun in the sign of Mars, and he'll take that through every house. Well, that's two signs, obviously, right? So, and you actually find that the interpretations I checked today, are quite good. Like Sun in Scorpio in the 9th is very auspicious, actually, according to Yavanajataka.
Himself, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we have to really be careful with this section, read between the lines, and perhaps, these are, again, the extremes. So maybe if the sun is in Scorpio and heavily afflicted and in a difficult house, maybe these refer more to the houses than the signs. Maybe we're better off seeing this as the sun in the 8th. Maybe the sun in the 9th instead of Sagittarius. I don't know, because I don't think Yavanajataka does in the individual houses. No, not in as much detail. It does do them, but not in nearly as much detail as the signs here. So it's kind of hard to say, but I think he's giving like a worst and best case scenario for each sign, and kind of trying to hint at sort of like a really just the extremes, just the intense extremes of like Sun in Scorpio afflicted, or where Mars is also heavily afflicted, or something like this, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense, and it's just not very good astrology. All right, next chapter.
Mercury.
Yeah.
Where do you have Mercury?
I've got Mercury in Aries.
What does it say?
A man who is thin but eats much. That's true. A rogue who prattles in vain and likes quarrels and weapons. I've been known to prattle in vain and like quarrels.
So
One
it
who's
kind of makes sense.
Yeah, one whose property is acquired with much labor and then lost. Haven't quite gotten there yet in my life. A man fond of sexual intercourse, well, who isn't?
Yeah.
Tricky craftsman, one whose position is insecure, who's fettered by many debts. I do have debts, school debts. A man delighting in gambling and who behaves like a knave and a rogue, a scribe who takes pleasure in singing and dancing. I do take pleasure in singing and dancing, and I do like to
like
write.
a knave?
A knave, that's like a dishonest person.
No, knave is like a it's like the in the tarot the number 11 card. What's it called? The
Justice or strength?
No. Court cards.
Oh, the court cards. The squire. Or
the squire, yeah, it's like the young guy in the court, like it means, that means boy in German too.
Well, yes. I'm often the youngest one amongst my group of friends. I'm like 40 years younger than many of my good friends. So yeah, in a sense. And I don't know if I'm a rogue. I'm a rogue in the sense that I don't care much for tradition, and I kind of sometimes could be considered like adharmic in a way, because I will criticize traditions heavily, and I sort of like these guys asked me to take a picture of myself with a tie for this magazine I'm writing for, and I just was like vehemently against it. Eventually I did it, but I was just like, man, this is so stupid, ties, and like, you know, that's where my mind goes. So kind of roguish.
This is where the difference is. You gotta ask.
Pick
more.
Your battles, yeah.
Yeah. No, you gotta ask more money for those photographs.
Oh yeah, sure.
But sure. I guess they were for free. You know, I was thinking that another reason why, you know, and this is something I wrote, that that another reason why maybe Yavanajataka speaks so bad about Scorpio is that maybe, I don't know, maybe he's referring to the houses instead of the signs.
Right, that's what I said.
Since he oh, you did say that?
Yeah, I kind of said it really fast though, but
okay.
That's what I was saying. Maybe it's the house, not the sign.
Yeah, because eventually he's going to be talking about the signs again, as you said before. So yeah. Let's read mine. Mercury in Sagittarius. Mercury.
Okay. Did you want to read it, or?
Oh yeah, I can read it.
Okay.
Mercury produces a nobleman of great renown endowed with the meaning of the sciences, crafts, sacred traditions, and courage. A wise man, skillful in speaking. Yeah, I guess so. One who indulges in sacrifices, vows, worship, and in charity, a priest, purohita, or a spy for a prince. I think I could do that very well. I could be a great spy for a prince. That would be my dream job. A man prominent in his family who knows writing and transcribing. I mean, if YouTube videos are there, I guess so. One who is clever in making decisions regarding actions and the use of things. So yeah, I guess that's pretty flattering. So I'm going to take it.
Okay, cool. Well, the other thing I want to point out too is that we can also apply what's said here to other people in our lives. So like, you know, if I mean, in my case, Mercury is my ascendant lord, so it might refer to me more. But you know, if Mercury ruled like my 11th house, like I could say maybe it's about my friends more than it's about me, or so on and so forth. So I think that's good to remember, because in ancient astrology, they weren't overly obsessed with the psychology or making everything about the person they were reading for. They kind of did a bit of both, sometimes more predictive, sometimes
because they didn't have safe spaces like we do now,
right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's not get triggered.
Yeah. And then I just found it interesting because Mercury in Leo is one of the most negative ones.
Yeah.
Having little memory and no knowledge, devoid of all these kind of good things.
And the sun is a friend of Mercury in the traditional Jyotish scheme.
Right, but in Yavanajataka, it's an enemy.
An enemy.
Yeah, in Yavanajataka, it's an enemy. So there it makes sense according to the logic in this text. Okay, so then Venus. Venus, yeah.
Do you want to read yours and mine?
Oh God, mine's really fucking negative.
Mine
Pardon my
too.
language.
Mine both.
Oh,
Go for mine.
okay. Okay, well, actually, real quick, first, I wanted to read.
So the enemies of Venus, according to Yavanajataka, are Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn.
No,
So
no, it's just Sun and
I'm
Moon.
sorry, the Sun and Moon. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
it's
Sun
vice
and Moon
versa.
are the enemies of Venus. But
But we should read Leo and Cancer, which in the traditional Jyotishkin, they're both enemies. So
enemies, yeah, so it's the same. Well, we get actually some pretty positive stuff for Cancer here, you know, like, but some coupled with some negative stuff. We get a man of righteousness, a wise person, but we also get a man tormented by hatreds and quarrels and arising illnesses which arise from faults of women and drinking. In Leo, we get, again, kind of a mixture, right? Handsome man, but who has little strength. One devoted to rules of good conduct, followed by gurus and brahmanas, and he obtains happiness from women and so on. But then the most interesting one was Venus in Virgo, where Venus is dejected, right? It's actually pretty good. Gentle man who possesses little wealth but earns his living by serving others, expert in women's ornaments, knows all about sexual intercourse and singing, understands writing and the arts. You know, he makes an effort to know the sciences of measuring and counting, and a man without kindness and affection among women. So yeah, troubles with women, that makes sense.
This is the pickup artist.
Yeah. Wander among those who resort to pilgrimages and conventions. So somebody who kind of steps outside of the tradition a bit. So it's just interesting because you think this would be like so negative, but it's actually kind of more gentle. It's a kind of a mixture of both things, and it makes good sense with what we know about Virgo and what we know about Venus. Okay, so now for fun, our Venus signs. What's yours?
Scorpio.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
We're both horrible to women. Okay. Venus in the 8th produces a cruel, hateful, and unrighteous Alarma man who is destroyed by his enemies and marries beneath his caste, a rogue of much wickedness among other men's wives. I mean, believe it or not, this is kind of... I mean, I've always had girlfriends who are not from... they're not from where I live, or they were raised very different to me. And at the same time, other women have detested me, not necessarily romantic couples, but I mean romantic affiliations. But so some people have detested me for things I've said and done before because of the way I think. Man without righteous dharma, who is rejected by his own brothers. I guess that's kind of true. And despised because of his character and his servitude. I am despised by my character sometimes. One fond of woman. Of what?
Injury.
Of injury, who suffers many debts. I don't have that much debts. Okay. Curses and pains, not necessarily. A braggart filled with diseases of the genitals. I don't have that.
Okay, good.
And if I did, it got taken care of. So let's continue.
Oh God! All right, I guess we'll do mine. But I don't know if I want to do them for every planet after this or not. But
come on, let's do it.
All right, whatever. Just be open.
That's how you cure yourself. That's the psychological part.
Okay, Venus in Aquarius produces a man tormented by anxieties, diseases, and miseries. One attached to fruitless activities. A man obstructed by his elders and sons. Well, I have been tormented by anxiety for sure. I don't get sick very often, but I have had a lot of miseries, especially regarding relationships and women.
Of course, yeah.
One attached to fruitless activities. In a sense, I've done a lot of things that just lead nowhere, that I just like doing them for fun, and then I just never finish them or whatever. Obstructed by his elders and his sons. I don't have any sons, but in terms of elders, I can't say I've been obstructed by elders, but I've definitely sort of had to rebel against certain elders, you could say. A person bereft of righteousness and shame among women. I don't know exactly what, I guess having shame among women. Yeah, that's fair. And then,
let's go on. Yeah.
A person bereft of righteousness. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe. I'm not sure about that one because I have other positions that say that I'm righteous.
This is great, man. This is great.
But I don't think I don't think marriage is like some deeply sacred, important thing, and I don't think that you have to be married to have sex, like most of the religious texts say, for example. So maybe that could apply. And then one fond of gambling and devoted to drink. I mean, I like alcohol, but I don't really consume it that often, and I've never really gambled. And then a person who does without such things as baths, eating, and performing sacrifices, but who indulges in acts of servitude to other men's wives. So this is quite funny because, first of all, like I don't bathe as frequently as some people. Like I will go for a few days without showering simply because I don't think it's really necessary, and I just feel okay doing that.
You're gonna start showering when you get a girlfriend, yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll see, right? Let's see. I do without such things as eating. I will go for long stretches of time without eating things. I've done that a lot. And then I don't really perform sacrifices. That's true. I'm not really into that. And who indulges in acts of servitude to other men's wives. This is the one that makes me laugh because there have been instances where I almost had some sort of, thing with married women. I will admit to that. It never went anywhere, but beyond just kind of an emotional connection. But yeah, that's
in my country, that's called playing with fire.
Oh yeah. I don't really want to do it anymore. It has left a bad taste in my mouth more than once.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be a married woman either. Like I'm also applying it to women who are already with somebody.
Yeah. Which is the correct definition. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily marriage. It's women who are like already in a relationship and that kind of a thing. But I've had some funny experiences there. So anyway, moving on to Mars. And we are going to find, a lot of kind of difficult stuff with Mars, but we still find that, like in a few signs like Aries and Capricorn, some pretty good results happening,
And another thing I wanted to say is that in Yavanajataka's scheme of friendships, there, Sun, Moon, and Mars, they have the Lord of their exaltation signs is their enemy. So, this kind of makes sense because in the Jyotish scheme, it also doesn't apply to it. But it's the idea of how this friendship scheme does not carry on in a logical way all throughout the work.
No, it doesn't.
So I don't know if you want to say something about Mars here.
Yeah, I was interested in Mars in Gemini because in modern Jyotish it's an enemy sign, but here it's in a friend sign, and so we find Mars in Gemini produces a man who often dwells in foreign countries, and all the rest of it that we see here, right? And I would say that, when I read this applies almost exactly to the astrologer Dane Rudhyar, who indeed relocated from France to America, and who all of these things seem to fit him pretty well in terms of like almost literally. I mean, clever in many activities, definitely. He was a polymath or a Renaissance man, and that kind of a thing. Steadfast, definitely, and so on. He's just kind of one of my heroes, so I wanted to mention that. And then I just, I wanted to showcase Mars in Scorpio, and then I think Mars in Capricorn too, because Mars in Scorpio, God, it's just evil, it's just really negative. That's its own sign, but it's like a murderer and stuff and all this stuff. And I do know that the guy who supposedly killed all those people at the Dark Knight movie premiere, he had Mars in Scorpio, although it was with Pluto as well. But, he had Mars in Scorpio in a night chart, supposed to be really, really great in the night chart and stuff. And yet he kind of fits this stuff a little more literally than maybe we'd like to admit. And then Mars in Capricorn, very, very good, very powerful, chief of an army, renowned, enjoying endless happiness and pleasure. He's noble, or has a noble wife, many relatives, and a pure lineage, and so on. So there is some stuff here that is very positive. Did you have anything you wanted to say, or should we do our signs?
Not really. We should do our signs.
Okay, what's yours?
Libra. And yours?
Aquarius.
So I go first.
Okay.
This is fun. I mean, this is
Yeah,
therapeutic.
it is fun.
This is what everybody does when they read these books. So,
Oh, yeah.
And I
You're
never
not.
see people when they discuss these things, they never talk about their positions. They never talk about themselves, and this is what we're doing. I mean, Mars in Libra produces a wanderer, a favorite who talks
Incessantly.
Yeah, that's probably me. A boaster who tells many lies and is without merit. Yeah, I'm lying. I'm an unmerited liar. A man of discreet body whose first wife dies. Yeah. A rogue
Ooh.
desiring the service and protection of others. One who lusts after the wives of his friends and elders. A man who lives with prostitutes and winemakers. Holy shit. A person without allies who loses the wealth he has obtained by himself. Well, yeah.
Ay.
That's my karma. What can I say, Yeah, I mean.
Oh, well, have you ever lusted after your friends' girlfriends or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't?
Who doesn't, though? Yeah.
I mean, I never taken action upon it, but yeah, I felt attractive towards girlfriends from friends of mine. A wanderer. I'm not that of a wanderer. I know I've lived outside of where I live now, but a favorite who talks incessantly, maybe. A boaster who tells many lies and is without merit. I like to act sometimes, so yeah, maybe.
Okay.
And I tell jokes that way, so yeah. A man of deceit body who's
deficient.
Wife deficient body. Well, I'm healthy.
However, I mean, if you're MMA, you gotta be.
Yeah. And my first girlfriend, we finished that relationship, so she died in a way. A rogue desiring the service and protections of others, maybe. I'm seeking your protection, Lars. One lust after the wives of his friends and elders. We've talked about that. Of elders, I don't think so, because I like younger women. A man who lives with prostitutes and winemakers. Prostitutes, that's a very loose term. I mean, probably any woman today would be considered a prostitute by these. Yeah, and winemakers. I mean, everybody. People who probably sell marijuana or
that's a good point. Yeah, that's
a person without allies who loses wealth he has obtained by himself. Yeah, I tend to spend. I don't spend a lot, but I spend. You know what that means?
Yeah, I think so.
But I spend on good things, like I buy some books, I pay my insurance.
Sure.
I pay my phone, so I'm spending, but are things I need for my life. So yeah.
Sure.
That was very therapeutic. Let's go to yours.
All righty. Mars in Aquarius. Produces a deformed, poorly dressed, and ugly man. Wow. I mean, I don't think I'm ugly, but I guess it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Actually, the deformity.
And you dress impeccably.
And I don't really dress impeccably. I know
that's why.
Yeah. I'm arguably poorly dressed. I wear sometimes like raggedy clothes with holes in them. So that's true. But deformed, not visibly, but I did, and I still have it to a certain degree on my chest. The sternum is not even. So one side of the center of my rib cage is slightly higher, and my brother has the same thing.
To chiropractic?
No, it's not something that could really easily be corrected.
So it's like a scoliosis, but in the front.
Yeah, it's not. Luckily, it has not caused me any sort of grievous harm. But yeah, technically, there's a deformity there. One who practices slander, envy, falsehood, and deceit. Well, to be honest, in the past, and I still occasionally slip into this, I have had a bad habit of, kind of talking behind people's backs a bit, or being a bit envious too. Like when I feel low self-esteem or something, I may become envious of what somebody else has or something like that. And so it's something I've had to really work on in life. Especially when I was younger, I was much more slanderous and envious for sure. I was more pessimistic. So a man, excuse me, a man constantly assailed by faults whose money is stolen. I kind of constantly assail myself with faults. Like I point out my own faults to myself a little too much. Money stolen. I've never really had money stolen. I mean, I had a guitar stolen once, but that was
I'm gonna go to the bathroom. Continue talking.
okay. Cool. All right. Okay, one whose body hair is erect and whose manner is sorrowful. I guess my body hair is erect. My hair sticks up in the morning and stuff. It just sticks straight up. Whose manner is sorrowful. I've had a sorrowful manner. Yeah, I'll admit that for sure. It's something I've had to work on, so to speak. Fond of drinking and bereft of courtesy and purity. Well, again, maybe when I'm drunk, which barely ever happens, I'm maybe bereft of courtesy and purity, but I don't drink that much. I do enjoy it when it's in the right company. Absolutely, I enjoy it. It's fun. So in a sense, I'm fond of it, but I'm not an alcoholic or anything like that. One who looks like an old man and is impoverished at the end of his life. This is interesting. I'm on the old man one. I don't necessarily look like an old man, but a lot of people have confused me for being much older than I am, and a lot of people think I am, like they feel like mentally and stuff. I'm much
and
older.
you look like 54. So yeah,
I look 54 too. Yeah, exactly. So, and then, well, I'm not impoverished yet. So, and I don't think I'm at the end of my life. So I don't know about that. And then one who gets money from gambling and does not keep a hoard. Well, I don't know. Maybe eventually I'll get money from gambling. I have thought about playing the stock market, but never done it. Who does not keep a hoard. In some ways that could be true in the sense that I don't like gather a lot of possessions, and I don't really hold on to a lot of the possessions I have. Like, I just don't really care too much unless it's something important like a guitar or like my computer or a cherished book or a cherished object, So, all right. So that in the Yavanajataka, the influence of the signs Mars. On to Jupiter, and then we're almost done.
Yeah. So yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say I have a friend who has Jupiter in Aries, and it's his Atmakaraka. And this description, I'm not even joking. Literally everything in it applies accurately to his life.
And Mars is the enemy of Jupiter.
Mars is the enemy of Jupiter, though Jupiter in Aries is not that bad off, according to Spujidvaja or Yavanashvara, whoever wrote this. Impatient of insult, excels in strength and power, bold, actions renowned, mighty person endowed with qualities of an orator, master of punishments, exalted fierce, a man delighting in pure jewels and ornaments. All these things are true, and my friend also collects tons and tons of stones and trinkets and ornaments and things like more like esoteric, mystical stuff. One who has many expenses but much wealth. Yeah, he has a lot of expenses. He spends money like crazy. He's in debt, but he has a lot of wealth nonetheless. It's very strange. Devoted to war, whose body is marked with wounds and whose foes are many. He actually wakes up with strange marks on his body from encountering things in dream time. I shit you not. He encounters enemies in dream time and wakes up.
Does he practice magic or any?
No, he's a very exalted, wise being, you could say.
Okay, cool.
I'll leave it at that. But yeah,
he needs to fight back then. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, we won't get into that now, but it's just interesting because this is something too you find amongst like any sort of dream walkers, shamans, kahunas, and things like that. So it is a real thing. So I just found that very amusing. And then I also wrote down, maybe that's the next chapter. Yeah, never mind. That's the next chapter. So do you have anything you wanted to look at, or should we just jump to?
Not really.
Just do our Jupiters or what?
Yeah. Let's do it.
What's yours?
Mine is Aquarius.
Okay.
What's yours?
Cancer.
Let's go for Cancer first.
Okay. All right, this is where I get to feel good about myself, I guess. Yeah. Jupiter in Cancer produces a handsome, wise, and noble man of strength and character. Wise and rich fellow, fond of righteousness, dharma. Glorious person esteemed by the world.
Yes, they all apply. A
man rich with many piles of grain and a great hoard. I don't have a bunch of grain yet.
You probably have a bag of rice in your kitchen, so yeah.
I usually do, yeah. Okay, one whose position is firm and possesses truth and concentration, a straightforward man whose acts are distinguished, or a king, or one who does favor Favors for his friends. I do favors for my friends, sure, yeah, and I do my best to be truthful and have concentration and stuff. So, I mean, these things generally apply to me, but this is one of the more general ones in many respects. It's not
And it's
super
exalted,
specific.
so it's gonna
It's
be
exalted, yeah. So I'm very fortunate to have that, and
Here
I
we
thank
go.
the Creator. All right, here we go.
Here we go. Jupiter in Aquarius produces a cruel and wicked liar of odious character. Yeah, no, I'm just getting the best here. One who is clever in bad crafts and in things pertaining to water, a leader of tribes who performs very vile acts. Well, I'm in my Jupiter Mahadasha, so yeah, whatever. I can relate to that. A greedy man. I'm not greedy. I'm not greedy. And if I'm greedy, it's not with material things. Intent on faults in his own speech. Yeah, I think that.
Okay.
Intent on faults on his own speech. What does that mean?
Does it mean lying? Does it mean
That I
focusing?
recognize when I say something that's erroneous.
Maybe it's that. I don't know.
Yeah, I do that. So
Okay.
who accomplishes his aim? Yeah, I do that. One whose body is afflicted by pestilence, having the nature of disease. Hopefully, I do not have that.
Yeah.
Unrighteous man, Vijuk Tabarma. Well, I don't know if I'm unrighteous. Suffering from diseases of the genitals. Once again, I get it. Oh, God. Here we go. Yeah, okay. One who lacks good qualities of the soul, such as intelligence.
Jeez.
Probably, yeah. Let's go to Saturn. Yeah, Saturn will save me. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'll go here. I have Saturn, fortunately, in Capricorn.
I have it in Sagittarius, so I go first.
Oh, you go first. Okay.
Yeah. Saturn in Sagittarius produces a soft man who speaks little and rejoices in acting according to his own dharma. So you can see this is completely opposite. So you see, I'm balancing all the negative with this little positive. One who knows the meaning of sacred tradition, the intelligible judicial procedure, learning and how to speak about affairs, and who has great fame. A man renowned on earth and obtaining honor because of the various noble qualities of the sons of others, whom he has taught, and
I liked
whom,
this one, yeah.
at first abandoning his property because of his saintly qualities, acquires wealth at the end of life and is very prosperous.
Pretty positive.
Yeah, that's very positive. Thank God.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, you go.
All right, Saturn in Capricorn produces an outstanding man who is to be honored as the originator of his family line. I don't know what that means. I mean, it doesn't apply to me currently. One who teaches how to speak about affairs and has many crafts. A traveler honored by multitudes. I've traveled a decent amount, not a ton, but how to speak about affairs. Yeah, I mean, kind of. And then many crafts. Yeah, I do many different things, so to speak. The lord of other men's fields, homes, and wives. Like, bring it on. Give me all that. No, I'm just kidding. One who takes pleasure in sexual intercourse. Well, again,
who doesn't?
Who doesn't? Bathing and ornaments. I honestly, I like bathing, but yeah, I don't do it copiously. And ornaments, I used to wear rings and stuff. I don't know.
Me too.
Okay. A man endowed with qualities of generosity, courage, ancestry, politeness, sacred tradition, wealth, and position. Sure, I'll take those. Yeah, why not?
Rock and roll.
Okay, and then I had a note here that I wanted to mention because it kind of it again helps us to better understand stuff here. It's Shloka 26 and 27 here. As this arranging by the planets is realized when they enter into their signs, so it is to be established as arising naturally when they are in their Dwadasamshas and Navamshas. So basically, if they're in a sign they don't do well in, but they have dignity by Dwad or Navamsha, then it's auspicious. If a planet is in its own Varga, Navamsha, or term, what the Hellenistics called bounds, or what we call trimsamshas sometimes, and in a cardine, right, an angle, it gives a result such as that which has been described. But if they are in each other's Vargas and are opposite to the degrees of their exaltations in their fall, right, they are full of the reverse influence. So This is
So
suggesting
what we've read is everything is wrong.
everything's wrong. But what this is suggesting to me is that it's like saying you got to pay attention to the strong planet on an angle, because that's really going to give the most potent results and may even override all of these other things that we're seeing. So it's kind of a little bit more esoteric here. You have to really know what you're doing, is what it's talking about. And now we come to the moon, and I realized too, we didn't talk about our sun sign positions.
Who cares?
But who cares? Yeah, I think that's fine. But the moon sign positions are the most extensive of all of them. We have about 4 or 5 paragraphs per moon sign, and then at the end of each one, we actually get with oh wow, it's even more. Sorry, it's about 6, 7, and we get if the moon is in Aries, we get all this stuff. Plus, if Mars aspects, it makes a king. If the sun, one whose staff is fearful. If Jupiter, a man having servants, and so on. Mercury, a wise man. Venus, a prosperous one. And if Saturn, a pauper. So this is very useful information, because it's not only taking the sign placement of the moon, it's also giving us insight into the planets aspecting that moon in that sign, modifying its powers and its significations. And we also find too that, interestingly enough, the moon in Scorpio is actually not that bad. And the moon in Capricorn too is pretty decent, if I remember correctly. So if we just look at that real quick before we look at our own moon signs, let's see. Gosh, yeah, it's long. It's
really long.
Here it is. Moon in Scorpio produces prosperous, bold hero, famous man honored by the Lord of good men, a cruel and fierce man who desires to kill others, but intelligent, right? And a lot of good things. Like he's an expert in sacred traditions and crafts. I mean, sure, he's harsh, jealous, and patient of insult, which I have found of a lot of Scorpio moons, sure. But, it's not what you would expect with the moon being fallen and with the other things he says about Scorpio in the other chapters. It's actually pretty decent. And then if we just go to Capricorn real quick, I had made a note about that. It starts up here, sorry. The moon in Capricorn produces a man who delights in woods, forests, lakes, well-dressed, singing, laughter, noble man of good righteousness. So again, there are some contraindications here. Fickle person who prattles lies. But by and large, it's just really fascinating how much attention he gives to the moon sign, and seems to want to drive the point home that it's not one-dimensional.
And not only that, we see here the emphasis on the moon that we're going to see later on in other Jyotish classics, which is very emphasized here. And as you said, this is a lot. I mean, this is useful information, but it's very specific information. And, this is where computers come in very handy today.
Sure.
These things are into computer programs, and you can get this automatically. But to look each one according to each chart is very tiresome, to be honest.
It is. But we also have like the basic principles coming into play here too. Like when moon's in Capricorn, right? If Mars aspects a king, because Mars is the exaltation lord. If Saturn, one like that, because Saturn is the lord. The only one that seems to be negative is if the sun aspects a jealous and impoverished and rough man, because the sun maybe just doesn't gel with Capricorn. And, generally speaking, the sun has a hard time, it seems like, in the Saturn signs. But I just think that's, this is like probably the best chapter of these.
Really?
6, 7 chapters we've done. I think so, because it's like, it seems a little bit more
specific, more
logical
serious
to me as well. Like you can follow the principles and you can follow stuff. And so what moon, what's your sign, your moon sign?
Aquarius. And yours?
Oh, okay. Pisces.
Okay.
So I don't think we want to read all of it because it's quite long. But
I just want to read the basics.
Okay.
The moon in Aquarius produces a weak, penniless, dependent, and angry man who has few joys. That's me. One who loses, obtains, and serves another man's wife. A poorly clothed person who slanders the origins of others. Maybe. A man attached to women. That's me. Gambling. I don't gamble. Envy of others, not necessarily. Slander, not necessarily. Tricks, maybe. An
Tending
attendant
corpses.
corpses. Holy shit, never have I done that. One who undertakes many enterprises, that's me. And knows no patron, that's me too.
Okay.
A man who hates his relatives and cheats his elders, that's not true. An intelligent person who has turned away from the fruits of righteousness, maybe some might say that. A man of deceitful character who is secretive, maybe. One who serves the world, yes, but is beyond affection, yes. A man whose friends are undesired and destroyed. Well, Lars, bad news for you. A despondent person who gives presents to those who are kind to him, that's me. A grateful and trembling man who is unable to carry burdens, maybe. One whose efforts are insignificant and whose speech is soft and slow, maybe. A man whose nose and ears are
pointed upwards. Your nose definitely isn't pointed upwards.
No. It's like, no, I know. Okay.
And who is
censored by the king? Definitely me.
Okay.
One afflicted by disease of the heart, winds, sickness. These were the Bata diseases and diseases of the genitals. Again with the genitals. I've gotten to people are knowing my secrets, man.
Yeah, now you're not gonna get laid anytime soon. Sorry,
well, you would be surprised. A man made sorrowful by hunger and fatigue, one whose wealth is destroyed by his enemies and rivals. A man who is always struck by such miseries as insensibility. Wow, I've gotten the worst.
Oh, what aspect's your moon, though?
Sign aspect or by planet?
Just either one. Like you have Jupiter there,
Mars,
right?
Mars aspects Jupiter's conjunct.
So Jupiter or Mercury gives a great man, and let's see, Mars, one who steals the wealth of others.
That's trine. Yeah. By square, you have Sun and Venus.
Okay, dies of disease and wandering. Oh, Venus, a man with an ignoble wife. Well, I don't know. Are you married? I don't think you're married.
No, but I've been married by natural standards. Let's say, I always say that if you're with a woman more than a year, then you're married.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, so
nice. So let's go to you.
Okay, the moon in Pisces produces a man endowed with conviction, strength, truthfulness, intelligence, steadfastness, renown, and power, a courteous and sweet-speaking person devoted to modesty, generosity, and civility. I don't know, whatever. A bold man abounding in knowledge and science. Well, I do know a lot of stuff. One who recognizes wise gurus and delights in good behavior. Definitely, I have recognized a lot of wise gurus, yeah. A man with a good wife who takes pleasure in the gods. Well, I'm not married yet. We'll see. Brahmanas and teachers, definitely. I have a huge list of great gurus and saints and stuff that I can rattle off to people. A man with a person possessing property, loveliness, beauty, and handsomeness. I don't know. I'm pretty ugly. One whose food and drink are dainty and who is fond of perfumes and garlands. Well, I do like nice smelling things, sure.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
Yeah, who doesn't? An expert. Well, actually, I know some people who exist in pretty foul stenches, but whatever. An expert in the rules relating to gymnastics. No. To music, yes. The arts to a certain degree. An owner of gold, lands, woolens, cattle, houses, and women. A well-dressed man who's respected by the king. I don't know about like these ownerships, but the king thing I mentioned maybe in another video we did together where I've been friends of people whose parents growing up were like renowned in something, and even one of my friends has royal lineage from 2 different countries. So one who's learned in the Puranas, medicines, vows, and sacrifices. I basically know all these things intuitively. I haven't studied them, but I understand them.
Oh, what a badass. Okay.
I don't know. I read it and it makes sense. A man whose actions are directed towards such places as rivers and oceans. Definitely. I grew up swimming in the ocean a lot, and I live near a river, and I'm even moving to a place that's near a river, and I love walking by rivers. One who knows the rules of action in subtle decisions regarding lawsuits, policy, and calculation. Maybe a friend of mine said I would probably make a good lawyer when she read my chart. I've been told that by a lot of people. It's not my ambition, though.
You have that vibe, you know.
Sure. A man fond of purity who moves swiftly and sleeps little. Yeah, I don't get much sleep, unfortunately. A very clever fellow whose teeth are small and few. I have one root canal, and I've had some teeth problems, but I have most of my teeth. See, a compassionate man with many enemies, friends, and wives. I have tons of friends. I've had enemies growing up, but I don't have any anymore.
You kill them. Yeah, okay.
I kill them, yeah. No. That a compassionate man. I like to think of myself as compassionate.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
Yeah, a diligent and virile man who is impatient of insult. Yeah, I really.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, definitely. If Jupiter aspects, which it does, a king, and then the only other planet that aspects is Saturn by a third aspect. So Saturn, a fierce person. I can be pretty fierce. Yeah. Don't mess with me, man. Don't mess with me. Okay,
you're from New York. You're from the city.
Yeah, I'm from New York. Don't cross those lines, you know. Okay, so 70. I have. I just wanted to finish what I have to say by looking at shlokas 75 and 77. If planets are in their own houses, friends' houses, in upachaya places, exaltations, and are aspected by very strong planets, then the signs which are not combined with the malefic planets are not injurious in the nativities. Again, this is kind of like a get out of jail free card or a get into jail when you didn't think you were in it for everything he said before.
That's a perfect description. It's get out of jail card. Yeah.
Planets and signs. So very important thing to look at. And then 77, and we're going to talk about the ascendant in our next video because that's where it's headed. And so we might revisit this first. But if the Lord of the Ascendant is at its highest strength, the native always receives his qualities from the Ascendant, perhaps instead of the moon. Because of this, among the places, the Ascendant is always called the soul. Therefore, pay attention to its natures. And so we do find this same attribution to the Ascendant and its Lord as the soul in some other texts too, like in the Liber Hermetis, which is a Latin translation of an old Hellenistic text on astrology. And so it's just something I like to point out because most of the time we think, oh no, the Atmakarika is the soul or whatever, but actually the Ascendant and its Lord have a lot to do with the soul, especially the Lord in my experience. So it's I
guess they all do in a way, but the Ascendant Lord is of vital importance. It's the pillar of life, without a doubt.
Yeah. So cool. I think that kind of sums it up for us. Did you have anything?
We said it was until 19 or 18?
Until 19, so we're stopping.
Oh,
we'll start here.
I understood we had that. No, so it's until 18. Yeah, it's 18.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that was even longer than I thought it was going to take, but it was nice. Yeah. I mean, no one has ever done this in the history of the internet, so we are making history.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And like you said, it'd be fun to do.
I'm really enjoying this. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it too. And like you said, it'll be fun to do it with other texts after we finish this Yavanajataka series. So we'll be doing a lot of stuff like this. And all right, cool. Well, stay tuned for more. Hit like, subscribe. You can check out Fernando's channel and his.
Congratulations if you saw the whole video.
Yeah, congratulations if you saw the whole video.
You have no life.
Yeah. Wow, what does that say about us who are making the videos?
We have a life. That's why we're doing this.
Oh, okay. All right, well, good times, and I look forward to our next sojourn into the Yavanajataka. All right, peace out.